What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today on the first day of November, November 1st, 2021. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Thank you for always making me your first listen of the day every single day on Locked On Pirates, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, on today's episode, we're going to have the wonderful Gary Morgan joining us again to talk about Bryan Reynolds and this crazy trade talk that's been going on as of late. We're also going to talk about the World Series and why an expanded playoff may not be the greatest thing to consider for Major League Baseball, and just some other things going around with this series in general. But thank you again for making me your first listen of the day every single day, and let's get right into it.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, and welcome back again to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. To my left, my left and your guys' right is Mr. Gary Morgan today on the podcast. And before we even get started, Gary, I just wanted you to go ahead and look at the bottom of the screen and see what I said while I also have my alarm going off. But see what's on there. It says Bryan Reynolds is going nowhere. So I said this on Twitter yesterday. I'm going to say it again on the podcast today. People need to stop with this nonsense. Like, they're like, oh, asking the Mariners for Julio Rodriguez and another top prospect is too much. I really don't think it's enough. Personally, that's how I was. Anything that I have seen on Twitter lately, I'm like, that's not even close to being enough for what you need for Bryan Reynolds. And I just want to hear your thoughts on it as well.
I mean, at this point, the best trade they could make for Bryan Reynolds is not making one.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from a lot of different places. First of all, he's a good player. Of course, other teams want him. It would be weird if they weren't asking, to be honest. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get surprised by that at all, and it happens all the time. The Pirates' ask was, in relation to Seattle's offer in particular, exorbitant. That's what it should be. If they're going to call and ask for him, and you want to have a real dialogue, yeah, you throw back some names that are equally outlandish. This stuff happens all the time, and I don't blame the reporters for reporting it because it's a story. There isn't really a lot going on right now. I think the national guys, they can't fathom a world where the Pirates wouldn't trade Bryan Reynolds because he costs some money this year. And to them, that's all that we're doing is trading guys that cost money. They don't see anything beyond that. And, to be honest, some of y'all out there listening don't see anything beyond that. You think it's all about money. It's just not always. And I'll say if he's not extended by next off season, okay, open your ears a little bit. But right now, no.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm hoping they do this offseason. It's kind of shut that all up anyway and just sign him to the extension that he deserves. I mean, if anybody on this team deserves an extension, it's Bryan Reynolds, just based off of the fact that he had the worst year he could possibly have in 2020, like most everybody else did too. But that was the first year in his career where he wasn't batting near 300. He wasn't doing very well. Defensively, he was a mess. Then he comes out this year, inserts himself into center field when the center field problem was a thing. Turns out to be a Gold Glove candidate, all that stuff. He's also a Silver Slugger candidate, all-star. I mean, getting recognition from everywhere. But the Pirates have to realize the time is kind of now to do this, because if he replicates any part of this season again next year, he's just going to keep getting more expensive. That's just how it is. And he's already going to be slightly expensive to Pirate standards, I think. But he's going to only continue to go up in price the longer that you wait to extend him. And like you said, if it's by 2022 and we're going into spring training and Bryan Reynolds still doesn't have an extension, then I'll listen to trade offers because that makes more sense. But you need to get the guy locked up and locked and loaded and ready to go when this team is really ready to make a push.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll disagree with is in 2020, he played good defense still. He had a ton of really of assists from the outfield, and I think kind of showed people he had an arm. That was actually one of the things I liked about his game in 2020 is even though he really did struggle at the plate, I didn't feel like he took it into the field very much. So, hey, different strokes. People see different things. I just didn't see it as a bad defensive year.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully too with the Bryan Reynolds stuff. I mean, it also, I think an extension for him as well would also bring in the idea that, hey, you have some other guys on this team that you could already be planning around extending, like an O'Neal Cruz, like a Key Brian Hayes, whenever you feel the need is ready for them. Obviously, there's a little more wait time on those guys because, I mean, they're still unfinished products. And whoever knows, maybe Bryan Reynolds is an unfinished product. Maybe he adds some like crazy freaking power to himself and hits 40 home runs next year. You never know. That's why you get these guys locked up the way that you do. But for people to sit there and say, like, I was looking at the comments from Locked On Marlins host RM Layton. He talked about the Julio Rodriguez and like all that stuff with the Mariners. He even said he doesn't think the Pirates would accept Noelvi Marte and Julio Rodriguez for Reynolds. He said it's just not. He said, cool, you're getting two guys that are polished, but why would you do that when you already have this guy on top of what you've already added to the system through the draft, and you have another top 5 pick next year? So it's not like you have to do all this stuff. You're going to be able to do something that I've been preaching for the Pirates to do for years, is trade for a good system at first, trade those players away, build the system, make it sustainable, but make it sustainable to the point now where you do not have to trade guys away to continue to have a good farm system.
I
Make
mean,
the draft picks worthwhile.
They're always going to have to trade guys away. I mean, under this system,
under this system, yeah,
under this system, that's what's going to happen. Even Bryan Reynolds, at some point, will get traded away. That's why I want him extended, because I want to push that timeline back. I want him to be here through this window. But at some point, yeah, he's going to get traded. It's not like it's a dirty thing. It's not like we have to pretend it's not going to happen, or Ben Cherington come in with some magic wand and he's a Bob whisperer and he's got, a better way of getting through to him, that it's important to keep guys for 20 years. Yeah, baseball itself just isn't going that way anymore. Like, I mean, if the Red Sox can trade Mookie Betts, the Pirates can certainly trade Bryan Reynolds, and it will happen at some point. That doesn't mean I want it to. It doesn't mean I want it to happen within the next 5 years, but it can happen. And it's not something to be afraid of. And if you do things right, you're arguably trading at the right time, and you get more players back, and that's how you keep churning. It's what you got to do in this system. If they change the system, okay, hey, different conversation.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, let's hope so under the right kind of like positives and negatives that could come with it. And I mean, I'm also not going to, I'm kind of treating the news that I heard the other day. I'm not sure how like big of it is about the work stoppage. I'm kind of treating it like Lord Voldemort and Harry Potter and just not bringing it up because there's just no point. Because I mean, nobody is going to know if they're going to stop doing stuff until the literal moment that it happens. Like, I mean, but the CBA has a lot to go over, and it's going to be really interesting, and we could talk about that here just in a moment. But Gary, I got to tell you about DirecTV Stream. DirecTV Stream, of course, we mentioned on the podcast earlier, all the different, we didn't mention here earlier. We mentioned it before we started recording. There's so many different games on right now, so much going on in the world of sports, and you've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream another game. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. It's called the DirecTV Stream. It makes watching your TV simpler for all the entertainment that you love without the hassle, and it's a great way to finally get your TV together. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So CBA stuff is, of course, going to go crazy here over the next, say, month or so.
Yep.
I mean, what do we expect at this point? I mean, I kind of told my friend last night, we were watching the World Series Game 5, and he's a major Braves fan. And I said, "You're watching history right now." He said, "Why? Because the Braves are going to win the World Series." I said, "No, they're not going to win this game, albeit they didn't win the game." So I was right on that front. This one's kind of a pending. I said, I really truly think that we watched the last game without a universal DH last night. I really do. I think they get it done in the CBA just because I think they've seen some of the patterns that you kind of see in this playoffs where especially Houston here in this World Series in Atlanta would kind of have that good inning going. Their 7 and 8 guys would get in, like get their hits and stuff. And then they immediately have to either pinch hit or just throw the pitcher out there. And it feels like it just threw their innings out of flux in a way. And for me personally, I'm cool with the universal DH because I think it opens up a lot of avenues for people. But I mean, I really think Game 5 of the World Series was the last time that we ever see a pitcher other than Shohei Ohtani hitting a baseball. Like, I really think so.
It's very possible. I've been talking about it for a couple of years now, and I mean, what you just described is an argument to keep it because it it's the only difference between these leagues as it is. And you're too young to really feel this, but when I was growing up, interleague play wasn't even a thing. So the All-Star game and the World Series, they had a different feel than everything else you watched. You were seeing teams that never played each other play. You were seeing players that never faced each other face each other. You were seeing guys who never had to hit forced to hit because they're in a National League park, and National League teams ill-equipped to actually put a DH in a lineup had to find a way to do it. And somebody like an Eric Gonzalez wound up being a DH and whatnot. It's a different element to the game. It's something that, I do feel you're right. They're barreling towards taking out of it. I almost think it's too far gone at this point. I think for the most part, everybody wants it. I think the fans by and large want it. But it is a sad thing. I think it's the end of an era. It's definitely changing the game I grew up with, but I can barely recognize it as it is.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of things as well that could just be brought out of like what we've seen these playoffs. Like, of course, like first of all, starting pitching value is about to go down because I mean, they're not letting these guys pitch past 5 innings anymore. So I mean, that's understandable. But I also, when I say that, I am also respectful of the fact to say like I understand they played 60 games last year, and a lot of them are still like not even completely fresh off of that. I understand that. But
it's
when you
still
hear,
a 10-year trend down. So
yeah,
it's not like COVID exacerbated a problem that was already started.
yeah, and I mean the thing is too is like when you hear Max Scherzer, one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, literally say, "My arm is dead," going into Game 6. Why are these people like? Why would any team? And I hope the Pirates take after this. Why would any team go spend 12 years, $300 million on, say, Garrett Cole or some of these guys who, yeah, they're going to give you great outings, but then what happens if they don't? You're just going to
You don't
lose all
have
their
to hope
confidence.
you don't have to hope the Pirates won't do that. They
Yeah,
won't do
I'm
that.
about to say the
So
Pirates ain't going to do that. Thankfully, but I'm talking like for teams like the Yankees, for teams like the Dodgers, the Angels, and stuff. I think you're really going to start seeing a shift in the idea that you might just see them go after the top bullpen arms. I mean, realistically, because the bullpen arms are what for me, from what I've seen, have basically been winning the Braves all these playoff games. I mean, you've seen some really, really good outings, though. I believe it was Game 3 where they had no hitter all the way through the 8th inning, and then Eddie Rosario just said, "Yeah, no, I'm not going to go catch that." Or it was Game 4. I was like, "Come on, dude, you got to go after that. You got to go grab that." But Tyler Matzik right now has probably made himself a pretty hefty payday with the way he's pitched this like postseason. But
yeah.
looking especially at Game 5, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, and you guys are not like if you guys are on audio, you will not be able to see what I am about to show Gary, but Gary probably already knows. I have this in the drafts. It is right there. It is just waiting. It is there. Are the Astros going to come back down from 3-1 and win this series? Because there's parts of me that says yes. There's parts of me that say Atlanta's going to close it out in Game 6, and I hope they close it out in Game 6. But is
I,
there that? It's going to be tough.
if I had to guess, I'd say really Game 6 is the World Series. I think if Houston wins it, they'll win it out. If Atlanta wins it, obviously it's over. So to me, whoever wins Game 6 wins the World Series.
And Game 6 is tomorrow, right? They are taking the day off for travel. Okay,
Yep.
Awesome. I was going to say, because I've been watching that football, basketball, and hockey like the last 4 or 5 days. So I'm trying to keep up with everything. And then, of course, 23rd birthday over the weekend. So I'm creeping up to the wonderful 25 mark. So you're probably going to be like, hey, what the hell? I'm still in prospect mode at the moment. We're not really sure where I'm at on the prospect pool. I heard I have a 55 voice, 45 production, 65 ad read, that's where we're usually at on that right now. But realistically, I don't know what you would think as well about this, but the key to the series, I think at this point for the Atlanta Braves is it's pretty clear when they limit the Astros offensively, that's all they need to do. If they limit them offensively, that's the wrap. Because I think, and I said this before the series started, the Atlanta Braves as a team are going to win more of the one run low scoring games than the Astros because they have the better pitching right now. That's just how it is. So looking into Game 6, if Atlanta comes out and scores 2 runs in the first inning and then the Astros match that, we've kind of seen a lot this postseason, considering there's been 3 grand slams in the first 3 innings this entire postseason, which I don't know what's going on. There's a real shot here that Atlanta could close this game out pretty easily. Or Houston, as you mentioned, winning Game 6, at that point, you have all the momentum. You're going into Game 7. You won 2 in a row. You were down 3-1. You have the home crowd behind you. But it's going to be very interesting to watch. But before we continue on to that as well, I want to let you know that today's episode, Gary, is brought to you by those wonderful people over there at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. I still have some of these wonderful paranormal pumpkin ones. We're not like Walmart over here. It doesn't turn to November 1st and we forget about Thanksgiving and pumpkins. Just saying. But of course, Built Bar has 9 unique flavors that are available for everyone. If you want to try all 9, make sure you get a mixed box that you can get 2 of each of the 9 flavors to see which ones you like and then order some more. Built Bar, of course, they are very healthy for you and 100% chocolate covered. Who doesn't like healthy stuff that's covered in chocolate? 3 to 5 grams of net sugar, 3 to 5 grams of net carbs, about 130 to 180 calories. And when you go to builtbar.com, make sure you use that promo code at the bottom of the screen, LOCKED15, to get 15% off of your next order, meaning you could already be a Built Bar customer. And if you've never used this promo code, even though you guys listen to this podcast all the time, if you never use the promo code, guess what? You could still use it, even if you were going and investing in Built Bars anyway. And those are Built Bars, the best protein bars on the market. So you brought up something to me before we started, and I'll let you have the floor once this pops up on the bottom. We've kind of talked about expanding the playoffs a little bit. It's something that me and you ourselves have brought up. I don't know how much it's really been brought up in terms of CPA talk. I'm not really sure. But you said something very interesting before we started recording, and I would like you to go ahead and share with everybody else what you said to me.
I think it's pretty clear that MLB, at least on the ownership side, they won't come out of this negotiation without expanded playoffs. It's something they absolutely want. They have buyers in the TV world for the airtime, and I think the money's too much for them to pass up. That's what they want. But last night, I bet there's more people that watched Jameis Winston get carted off the field than watched Adam Duvall hit a grand slam in the World Series. I don't think it has the same luster it used to. And I don't think having games even later than this is necessarily going to be a good idea. So I don't think they can just tack on another round of playoffs into this thing and have it end somewhere in the middle of November, if not Thanksgiving, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
To me, it's getting a little bit too long in the tooth. What about some of these cold weather cities too, like Detroit
Yeah.
and even Pittsburgh? New York.
I mean, even in
Do
a
you
way,
really want
Atlanta.
this game played in the snow? Not really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because even Atlanta being in northern Georgia, like it's surrounded by mountains. I mean,
Hmm.
and you can't expect the Astros to get there every year and play in a dome and close a dome. You just can't expect it. You can't get lucky and hope it's Rays Astros every single year in the middle of November because guess
Right.
what? All you got to do is close the dome. But I mean, I agree 100%. But there's also the idea that I believe that if you're going to expand the playoffs at that point, you have to kind of do the reverse of what the NFL did because the NFL is like, hey, here's an extra game and an expansion to the playoffs. What I think MLB should do, you can expand the playoffs if you want to, and then shorten the season a little bit. That way, you even maybe end around this time or even a little bit earlier. Because I think they do need to start ending a little bit earlier. As you noticed, of course, I'm going to be honest here. How many people in Pittsburgh outside of me and you and people that talk about the Pirates care about the World Series right now? They care about the
Yeah,
Penguins and the Steelers right now.
especially yesterday. That here we are. We're sitting here the day after the Steelers beat the Browns, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're a dedicated Pirates
Mhm.
fan, most likely, right? So I bet even many of you did not watch the World Series. It's not even that the teams are bad or they're a bad mix of teams for this market or something. It's football season now.
Mhm.
People want to watch football at this point, and unless they have a vested interest, their city's teams in it. Baseball season ended a few weeks ago,
Mhm.
and I think it's something that they're going to have to tackle. This is just not the same as it used to be. I mean,
Yeah.
even like some of the stars of this game were called Mr. October, not Mr. November. I don't want the game ending right now. I mean, they need to do something about it. I really think so. It's a summer and spring game. It is not a fall and winter game.
Yeah. I mean, and I agree 100% as well. And I mean, probably a good example of what you just said too. The Braves and Astros kicked off at 8:08 yesterday, meaning they kicked off about 20 minutes before Dallas and Minnesota played.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong here. I know this is a baseball podcast, but Kirk Cousins and Cooper Rush don't exactly spit primetime football to me. The game ended up being great. I watched
Yeah.
it on my phone while I watched the World Series, but I would go out on a limb and say as well about how you said the Jameis Winston thing. I guarantee you would say about triple the amount of people probably watched Sunday Night Football last night rather than watching the World Series. And the crazy part about it too that also sucks is Adam Duvall hit that home run yesterday. I've never seen Truist Park and Braves fans be so freaking hyper in my entire life. And then, of course, the Astros bounce back. But it's just for me, it's your fan base of what you already have, especially the younger fan base. One, they're probably not like, first of all, they're probably not watching these games this late in the year anyway. They're cold. It's getting cold outside. They're going to school and coming home and leaving it alone. And for me, the kind of consensus that you have to look at is how do we mitigate it to where we could say the season could end, as you mentioned, maybe at the beginning of October. I shouldn't be really watching baseball when my birthday's up. If my birthday's
Yeah.
October 30th, like I believe it was 2 years ago, it was perfect. Nationals, Astros, game 7, it was on October 30th. That was the last day, that was the last game of the year. That was it. And I mean, some of it may go to having too many off days during the season. I don't know how the schedule works out to get to this point, but it is kind of ridiculous. I mean, say that the Astros win tomorrow, you're not going to see baseball end until November 3rd. That would
It's
be
a
less
long
than
season.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
long season to begin with, and there's a lot of ins and outs to trying to cut back on the number of games. You have ticket sales, you got prorated salaries. They're going to get into some kind of an argument about that stuff, and I don't see it happening. So it's either got to be moved back, or don't add to the playoffs. It's just not something that needs to be done.
I personally, just looking at the team pool too, I don't think adding to the playoffs would have meant that much of a difference this year, except the fact that I was a Blue Jays homer after they were getting down there, and I thought the Blue Jays could have won the World Series if they made the playoffs just based off their offense alone. But that doesn't happen every year.
It
I'm
wouldn't
going to
have
be
made
honest.
much of it. It wouldn't have made much of a difference. You're right.
No.
But it would have given teams that, maybe don't deserve it a chance to say they made the playoffs, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's just one game. And that's really what this is about. It's a placating of the small markets. It's, hey, you guys be quiet for another 5 years because we're not doing the salary cap thing, and here's your shot at getting in the World Series, right? So, yeah, okay, I guess there's that. To me, they have a lot of things they need to accept as realities and address. And one of them is you're not going to beat the NFL. The NFL is king.
Mhm.
And people are not going to watch World Series games that start at 8 o'clock and end past midnight on weeknights. The NFL is even smarter than that. When do they start the Super Bowl? 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
So that everybody has a chance to watch it. You can make it an all-day event on the weekends, right? Move MLB and the World Series to something reasonable like 6:30, even 7 o'clock. Just
Yeah.
like
An hour earlier.
start it normally so that you're
Yeah.
not asking people to stay up till 1 in the morning to watch teams that, let's face it, 80% of the country borderline cares about,
Mhm.
and give it a shot. But right now, it's just, to me, I don't see any buzz about the World Series. You don't hear anyone talking about it. It's not even the lead on SportsCenter most nights. The World Series.
Nope.
That's a problem.
Hey, don't let me go ahead and tell you it's not because the Dodgers and the Yankees didn't make it. That's always the reason why baseball doesn't get its due, because the Yankees and the Dodgers don't do enough. Which I said this the other day to one of my friends as well, watching this as we're coming down to the tail end of today's podcast. I said one of the worst and best things that could happen to baseball is a Dodgers Yankees World Series in 2022. You know why? I say it because it would bring a lot of people to the sport, because those two teams are like the two teams that you can jump right onto the bandwagon with. But it would also prove that, say you do expand the playoffs and the Dodgers and the Yankees both make the World Series, what did it really change? What's it really going to change in 2022 if, say, Milwaukee makes the playoffs again and Cincinnati, you expand the playoff and Cincinnati slides in there, right? But then it's still Dodgers, Braves, Astros, Yankees, or something like that, Like it's like you told me when I said there was real parity in baseball, and how they like to mask the fact that they have parity because they haven't had a repeat champion in 21 years. Well, guess what? The Patriots didn't repeat that often when they won 6 Super Bowls in a matter of 13 years. So, I mean, but you could call that parody if you would like to. But I like that the NFL just says, no, really wasn't. This was just one of the best dynasties of all time. And I mean, you look at it right now, and I'll end on this before we end today. Atlanta's doing all this without Ronald Acuna and without one of their best pitchers. Who doesn't expect them to be back next year? Because I do.
I don't know. Without Freddie Freeman, we'll see what they do with Freddie Freeman.
Yeah. If they bring everybody back, mostly, I think they're right back here. Or the Dodgers upset them. That's like my 2022 stuff right now, but we'll worry about that when the offseason comes around. But Gary, thank you for joining as always. Where can people find your work and everything that you do?
Everything I write is at InsideTheBucksBasement.com, and believe it or not, still writing.
Yep.
And my podcast, The Pirates Fan Forum, is on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. You can find that anywhere you find good podcasts.
Oh yeah, I'm also celebrating a Steelers victory yesterday. That was fun. Joey Molinaro, by the way, actually kind of cracked me up yesterday. Before I do all of my little introductions, he said, "I never want the city of Pittsburgh and its fans to be happy about beating the Browns. It should be expected." I said, okay, I appreciate you saying that, man, but that team over there, I don't know what's going on with them, and I'm not trying to figure it out.
I think most of us watched the first 6 weeks of the season, though. I'm okay being happy that we beat them
Yes,
because
yes, yes. Trust
we
me.
haven't
Yeah.
exactly looked like world beaters. So
No, but we are in the playoffs right now. And hopefully the Pirates will be getting to the playoffs soon too. By the way, you guys can follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube, where you can see me and Gary's wonderful faces every single Monday. You can follow it on Odyssey as well. You can follow this podcast at Locked On Pirates on Twitter. You can follow me at MVP_Ethan. You can follow Gary at GaryMo2007. Gary, thank you so much for joining as always today. And until next time, guys, until tomorrow, I will see you on the flip side.